What's up, Kingdom of Rock? This is Matt Gibson, Michael Melenda, here again for another exciting episode. Today we've got Mr. Greg Hoy. Welcome to the show, Greg.
It's so nice to be here, Matt and Michael. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Matt has given me crap for being echoey, but I happen to be in Palm Springs in a 50s era kitchen, so I'm actually speaking from 60 years in the past.
I mean, you should go get in the pool.
I can bring you guys with me.
Yeah, if you want to, you can. No, it's all good.
Yeah, I think I might disturb some other people out there in the pool, so I'll stay here for that.
All right. So,
Greg and I were just talking about. Well, you should introduce Greg, Matt. Sorry, we're jumping in too quick.
Well, no, Greg's a multi-instrumentalist, producer, songwriter. You're kind of a jack of all trades. You do music videos. You do all kinds of cool stuff. What would you say your like strongest superpower is in all of those, Greg?
I would say podcasting.
Podcasting. Well, hey, you're actually in the right place for that. Good answer. Good answer.
No, I just want to say before we get started, I listened to the Steve Vai podcast.
Oh yeah.
Ago. So if that's your bar, we should probably hang up right now because that guy is the guru. He is the Svengali.
Yeah, that was.
I took notes during that podcast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I probably cried during that podcast.
It's hard to come up to Steve Vai, but Matt and I are the same, Greg. So you have to actually raise the bar. We're just the same guy.
Yeah.
So if this sucks, we're going to blame it on you. Actually,
yeah.
As well you should. You know, you can go on with another guest next week and be fine. It's you can blame it all on me. I'm not upset about that at all.
But we were talking about just before. You kind of sent this funny email. It's like, and if you just want to talk about the newly re-edited video of Prince, playing "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, I'll do that. Which we were kind of joking about, but man, what an entry! I mean, that was like a masterclass on how to own the stage when you're holding court with other very famous people. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I think the thing that was so impressive, and this was probably the second time I saw it, was how much restraint Prince showed before he stepped up front. Mm-hmm. It was, you barely knew he was there. Like, we knew he was there because we're watching the video, we're waiting for it. And then the way he communicated with all those people, and I don't know, but I would bet they never had a conversation. That's just something that I would think that maybe they didn't like have a rehearsal. I don't know any of the background, but then Prince just shows up and he's communicating with his body, with his eyes. And it's magic. It's pure magic.
Well, I love that fact where he's there, but then he kind of just sneaks in front, and you can hear the audience go, because maybe they didn't even notice because he was back behind everybody else. And then he's just there in front, completely decked out in that red suit. That just the camera just goes zap, right to him. It's unbelievable.
And he blows all these solos. Like, he takes a couple different things. And I think the thing that I like the most, I mean, the planned part where he fell into the front. Mm-hmm. Okay. But at the end, he throws his guitar. I don't know if you caught that at the very end.
Oh, yeah,
that to me was him being like, I've done what I had to do. That was like his sacrifice to the rock gods right there.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. And I love that the director said, well, I was debating whether to show you what happened at the guitar after that, but I just decided, nah, we're just going to cut away when the guitar goes up in the air.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that was, I mean, fantastic moments. And like, I think now here we are in 2021 and you watch something like that. And I'm waiting for another moment like that to happen this year. Like, what's the next thing that's going to happen that's going to make everyone stand up and be like, because I haven't seen one yet. Maybe there's one that I haven't caught, but where are the Princes?
Yeah, well, and this actually segues very nicely into, sometimes I think the songwriters, musicians get a little bit frustrated about, is it about the song anymore or not, or is it about the video? Now, you obviously are a serious songwriter and a quite accomplished one. I love your stuff, but you also put a lot into the videos as well. So what's kind of your take on how much importance for each? I mean, is it equal, or how do you kind of parse it out?
Yeah, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and my idea of catching a moment was seeing it live. So I'm going to bookmark that. The thing I think I realized, especially in the last year and change that we were all doing what we were doing, is there needs to be a new way to get people to feel that energy and feel what you as an artist or a musician are trying to communicate. And as much as I love playing live, I play live as much as I can. I was stuck in a rut like everybody else. And how I dealt with that was I dove into iMovie and I said, how do I try to find moments? And it's nothing's, not to quote Prince, nothing compares to you, but how do I find moments of that connection with people through music? And video to me has been probably my newest challenge / enjoyment, to try to recreate that moment live that we haven't been able to have for so long.
But so many people, I mean, we've all seen, Matt and I certainly, as we look through people to have on the show, we see big mistakes. Like, okay, we all know COVID shut us down. Let's perform on video. And they either like go nuts because, okay, I gotta jump around and up this kind of stuff, or they haven't practiced enough and the vocals or the chops are kind of not happening. They don't bother editing out the bad stuff. They just think it's going to be fine the way it is. There's still a lot of pitfalls to get to where you're talking about, to energize an audience. And let's face it, an audience is more forgiving with a live performance because it's there and gone. But video stays there forever for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I think, and Michael, you understand this so well because I've been involved with reading work that you've helped, put out into the world. I always like a story. What is the story here? And when an artist can tell me that story top to bottom, however we approach them now, whether it's social media, video, Spotify, all the different connection points that aren't live, I just want to take that off the table. Mm-hmm. I want to feel that story, and I want to feel that story being consistent for the story I'm telling myself about that artist. So that to me is where that's sort of the sweet spot for people right now. And the people that are finding that are the ones that are still giving me, the excitement that I had when I was, 16, hitting my first power chord in my bedroom.
When exactly was that, Greg? As far as like in the eras of music, what was going on in the music scene when you were young? I
have a really funny, because we do this like reverse sort of, we take things apart as we get older and look at like where we come from. And I remember I was 10 when Jump came out by Van Halen. And I asked my mom to buy me one of those, like Yamaha keyboards, like the ones you would go into like a department store.
I literally did exactly the same thing and took piano lessons and learned 1984 on keyboard.
Isn't it? Honestly, Matt, I think there's a whole generation of musicians that were influenced first on keyboard by Eddie Van Halen, which no one really talks about.
I was too. And I remember sitting down, you could press like on the bottom part of the keyboard. I'm not a keyboardist really, but you could press a chord and you could hit chord and you could hear the notes. Mm-hmm. You'd hit this like one note, which was like a C, and then you'd hear, C, E, G. And I remember sitting there with my ears, like that was how I learned to play. I'm like, it was all by ear. And then I realized Jump was also in C. Yeah.
And I played it wrong for 20 years, but it was the way I learned it. And it was massive for me.
Yeah, dude. That's killer. Like I took piano lessons and I learned 1984 Panama, Jump, and or not Panama. I'll wait. Yeah, and then I learned all of 5150 on keyboards.
Right.
That's how I got started. In fact, my first band that I was in, I'd bought one of those really ridiculously expensive piano store Yamaha keyboards that now is worth like $100,
Sure.
And it was probably $2,500. My parents had to finance the damn thing. And it was like, and so they sold me the piano lessons. And I remember everybody had guitar players, but nobody had a good keyboard player.
Right.
So because I could play Bon Jovi Runaway in 5150 in 1984, everybody was like wanting me to be in their band. So I was carrying this stupid keyboard around everywhere.
We are the same, my brother. Like, I remember learning Bad Medicine for a party my sophomore year on keyboards. Just like and being the keyboard player wasn't cool. And in some ways that was great for me because I didn't understand the power of music yet. So it was cool to just be like, almost like Prince was at the beginning of that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing. I was just like off to the side, and my drummer was like Mr. Neil Peart, and like had the long hair and the double kick drum. We were probably louder than it was probably just drums, really. That's probably all anyone heard. But having that keyboard, I felt connection. I felt something going on, not just connection to the band and the people around me, but like I had learned a song that I heard on the radio. Holy shit.
It's interesting because I'm about 97 years older than both of you guys. So, the jump thing was, not an epic moment for me. It was like,
right.
It was like, really, because right. Some guitar players, in that era of the 80s, you kind of couldn't get a gig unless you had a keyboard player in your band. Guitar bands were kind of shoved to the side again for a while. It's cyclical. It all happens and you come back, blah, blah, blah. But, I got to say, I loved all the innovations and, keyboard technology at that time. Kind of wish that guitar technology would have followed suit. But it was just, it was just kind of like, oh, come on, Eddie, really? You're going to do it now?
Well, if you want to get on the yin and yang, the yin is that Matt and I got into music because of that song. The yang is,
good.
Remember all those terrible MIDI guitar interfaces that came out after that?
Oh, yeah.
Where like Vernon Reid had one for like Time's Up. And I remember going, I saw them on that tour and he was playing and I was like, is there a keyboard player backstage?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
he has that. Vernon Reid has always had, an entire metropolis of gear following him around. So, if it's not MIDI keyboard stuff, it's, 7,000 guitar amps and 47,000, stomp boxes.
Well, just the refrigerator behind him of like stuff that it's like one of them's this big and it's a tuner.
Yeah. Dude.
Well, just from an educational standpoint, to share your knowledge, what videos have kind of blown your minds that are more or less recent today that you've looked at and said, oh shit, I got to steal some licks off these cats?
Michael, that's a great question because I don't know about both of you, but I watched a lot of video in the last 18 months. And just also because I have like somewhat of a tech background, I'm very conscientious of when something's trying to be like pushed down my throat. Mm-hmm. But two things got pushed down my throat by YouTube that actually hit the bar for me. One was a band called Distat. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with them, I think they're from, I want to say, the Netherlands. And they have a song called Kitty Kitty. You should just watch this video. This video, I'm sure it has 5 million views at this point. But it's like, it shouldn't work. It's like 6 minutes long. Mm-hmm. It's completely a band, but it's digital. And it makes this massive political statement that you don't have to see. You don't like all three of us could watch it and walk away with 3 different things. I've probably watched that video at least a dozen times last year. And that was the first one that really like, wow. And I like the band too. The band's great. Like their music's awesome.
Okay, well, so, the sound of the band and the song aside, what was it visually that attracted you to it?
The video, I'll try to just briefly describe it. The video is all about the band multiplies. Let me just put it at that. And then with the band multiplying, it's band, all of a sudden they've multiplied into their other self. So there's 2 multiplicated bands facing off. It's kind of like West Side Story a little bit. They're coming at each other. But then lyrically, the song is clearly political. It's clearly probably their take on, conservative, what was going on a year or 2 ago versus like maybe a more leftist idea. But they use color and it's fantastic. Just absolutely check it out. And then the second video that really I loved was Pussifer, Maynard Keenan's band. And it was called Apocalyptical. And the thing I loved about that video was, to me, I think I'm going to make an assumption. they clearly made it all separately, but it's somehow the way they put it together, like a great mix artist, it felt like a cohesive presentation of the song. And both of those I probably watched, and I mean, Apocalyptical was interesting because it had such a resonance for what we were all going through emotionally with COVID and the pandemic and all those things.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm a film fan, I'm a video fan. I love screwing around with video, and the surf band I was in, Surf Monster, was invited to kind of do a video for this 4th of July thing last year. We were in the middle of COVID. And I mean, I did one of those things where I put 4 videos together and completely kind of failed in a way. It was just like 4 Zoom screens that weren't very interesting. Yeah. There was a couple of things. I mean, I might probably be a little bit too hard on myself, but it's hard to take those elements and figure out, okay, how far can I push this to make this into something, and I think, like a lot of bands, I was just trying to make it look like a live performance. It's never going to look like a live performance. So, that didn't work. So I consider that, on a certain level, it's kind of nice to be a mature artist and still screw up so tremendously badly,
And I think, you make a good point. I think for me, it's about thinking about the medium. Like, I think about when I was growing up, the reason I love, and I still love, LP records is there is a limit to the amount of music you can put on one side of that thing, right? So now when I listen to LPs, because I have crazy ADHD, I know that within 18 to 20 minutes, I will have to get up from whatever, hyper focused thing I'm doing and flip the record, or else I'm going to sit there and hear the it's like an alarm clock for me. So when I think about what you're saying, there is the limitation of the medium, but also there is within that, especially if you're kind of a bonkers artist that thinks about stuff all the time, there's parameters there. And with parameters comes some sort of almost salvation in, this is what I'm working with, and this is the medium that I'm going to exploit to its maximum possibility.
Well, it's funny because it was just a thing that John Cunaberti, Joe Satriani's engineer and producer, posted on Facebook today that said, when did we start using so many mics on drums? And there's like Ringo with, overhead mic, kick drum mic. There was a Motown session with like 1 mic. And there was, and it's just crazy because, like I said, sometimes the limitations are what make the thing, because you have to work around those. And I've always said, man, if you're a Pro Tools expert and you've got, 75 tracks running, you may want to go see somebody about that.
And also, I'm lazy when it comes to mixing. I want to get as many sounds as possible in as few tracks. I just don't want to spend. I have friends that have been working on a record for a year, and I'm like, dude, just you made it's analysis paralysis at this point. You make the decisions and commit. And most of the time, when it's a band record, I record to tape. For that very reason, I want to go to 2-inch tape. I want it to be a live performance because it limits my ability to keep screwing around. With the last record we just did, Cacophony, like 5 days in the studio, mixed it in a day, done. Like I booked the mastering guy before we even went because I knew the second I give myself, give him enough rope, that's what happens to me. Pretty soon I take this beautiful moment and I turn it ugly.
Yeah. Well, and I have to. I'm not trying to be a cranky old punk rocker here. There's some amazing records that were made with 7,000 Pro Tools tracks that took like 18 years to make, and I get that. But it's hard for me to get away from my past, where studios were incredibly expensive.
Yep.
Everything was based on like the Beatles, the Kinks. You go in live, you do your thing, and like even if I'm confronted with Pro Tools all day, all night, all month to do anything. And just unlimited tracks, I still kind of just go, I usually don't go over 24 anyway, because that training is, I don't want to spend like a shit month of time mixing this thing. I just want to like be a painter, just, okay, it's done,
There's one guy that I love, one artist that I love, Beck. And Beck works on stuff ad nauseum. That record he did with Pharrell Williams, they took 7 years to make that record. And it to me is just as fresh as if they would have spent a weekend making it when I listened to it. So I think there are like to your point, like I don't know that it matters. It definitely doesn't matter anymore. For me, I need those lanes. I need those barriers, or else I'll just keep going. And I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. I'd be sitting in bed working on my first record.
I mean, I think it's just up to the artist and what what pace do they want to do their art? Are they trying to be in production mode where they're just cranking it out, or are they doing it more for some people just do it for the therapy of doing it, you know,
100%.
like, so, you know, there's all kinds of people.
Sometimes I wonder to that point, Matt, if some artists today even know why they're doing it. You know, are they doing it because they took a recording class online somewhere and they said, oh, you've got 7,000 tracks and you can do this and you can move shit around and get it perfect and you can, and they're just going, oh, okay, that's how I do stuff. Rather than, are they looking at their song, their art, whatever, and going, what does this need to be absolutely seductive to another person? You know,
Right.
And that may not be spending 7 years, you know, with 7,000 Pro Tools tracks. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, to defend Beck, I think he put out like 4 records in that time period outside of that one, even though he was working on that. And that's the other thing I wanted to say is, I think for me right now, especially, even though I have multiple projects going on, I think a lot of that sort of multidisciplinary stuff actually comes down to after the record's done. Like, how am I going to get people to pay attention to this? And it's been a very interesting, again, the COVID time, I would have bet if I would have done the tour we were supposed to do last spring, gone into the studio, I probably wouldn't have spent the amount of time I've spent to promote these songs. And it's been a fascinating moment for me, this, especially, you know, being 20 years into my career, to watch how, if I put that attention into, you know, what's going to resonate with other people to check out this stuff. It's just fascinating. And I think that's why recording fast has been like actually positive for me, because then I can put the energy elsewhere.
I remember reading Joe Satriani's book, and he was talking about the limitations of using tape and how it really was valuable to the creative process because it forced you to commit.
100%. I agree with that. And I think that there's something about saying something's done, whether it's a track or a record or a lyric, that it's almost a lost art. And when I talk to very young artists, people that are new to making music, that tends to be where they get stuck. I mean, I don't know if you fellas are on Reddit, but Reddit's full of people that made a song, they throw it up there and they're like, how do I know when this is done? I see that question all the time. Mm-hmm. And it is a fascinating question, especially in this age where Led Zeppelin's going to remaster their catalog for the 500th time. You know, like when is something done?
Do you know what I was just going to say, what I told my daughter? She's a new artist and she's polishing her track and stuff. And she's like, Dad, how do I know when it's ready? I'm like, well, I think if Stevie Wonder came over to your house and you played it for him and he felt good and enjoyed the music and didn't say your track was horrible, I'd say you did a good job. So like shoot for the stars, you know, like compare it with other professional works. It doesn't have to, it should at least be up to the production quality of professional works when you A/B it, when you listen to it, you know, which there's actually some good plugins for that.
I think that's a tough thing to do too now, because I mean, production quality in the 70s, that was a defined thing. You know, now we see hits on YouTube that are very thin or full spectrum or distorted, or, you know, it kind of doesn't, I don't even know what full production means anymore, personally.
Yeah. Matt, I want to say 2 things to what you said. First of all, that's awesome that your daughter's an artist, because I have a 9-month-old and I want her to be an artist too. And the second thing is, you better get Stevie Wonder's number if you're going to be giving her that advice.
Yeah. Well, I also just, well, Matt will figure out a way to get Stevie Wonder over his daughter's house. Don't worry about it. But that aside, it's funny because, you know, in anything I've done, I've always been able to make a quick decision. Now, I've made just as many mistakes as I've had successes. But I think that if I worried about stuff, the average might be the same. And we all know people who, whether it's music or not, they just can't make a decision. And I think with artists today, you know, people that just can't make decisions are never going to be saved. You know, they're always going to get buried in the morass of whatever they're doing. But I have to hand it to like the Reddit kids. It's like, if you're trying to figure out how do I compete with what's out there, you know, maybe it scares you a little more than it would scare me or you.
Right. Well, I think we're dealing with two things. One is I do think the period of incubation that we had growing up, it seems to be dissipating. And I think that's still something that people, when I talk to young artists, I say, let it simmer. Like, you don't have to throw up a beat as soon as it's done on SoundCloud and look for some sort of affirmation that what you're doing is good. Having said that, part two of that is I'm not in their shoes. Like, I have a very different long-term perspective about how long I've been making records, how long I've been working with other people. And you see over the years how technology has in some ways forced people to think that they need to think a certain way. When in actuality, to me, I had great advice years ago from Brian Baker from Bad Religion. We went out and had drinks and he said, I write every song on the acoustic guitar. And it was the weirdest advice from this guy who I knew as like a shred rocker. Shred might not be the word, but someone that I knew as like, he's writing powerful guitar music, electric guitar music. And if it doesn't work on an acoustic guitar, Greg, I don't use it. And that to me was like one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got.
Well, I got that advice back in the 70s. If the song, from a different standpoint, if the song doesn't stand up with just you strumming an acoustic, it's no good. If you need production to make that song work, you're lost. So it came from a different angle, but same thing.
Yep.
But Matt, I think you're muted.
Matt, I think you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I had
no worries.
Technical difficulty here. Yeah, I kind of think that's why the Van Halen thing worked.
100%.
He writes most of his stuff on the piano.
Yeah.
Like
hear about it later. Piano riff.
Yeah, because it's almost like you can hear the melodic piano in all the songs, but it's not there.
Yeah.
And then in 1984, he started putting it there.
100%.
A little bit,
There's a YouTube video. There's a YouTube guy, and maybe you've seen him, where he just posts dry drum tracks. Have you checked this guy out? Yeah. And I listened to a lot of, because full disclosure, I'm working on like a Van Halen-esque record next. Like that's like the next thing. And it's like, it's not Van Halen, but to me in my mind, it's like, what if I was Eddie Van Halen? And I'm listening to like Panama with just Alex Van Halen's little Synsonics drums. And I'm like, this is nothing without Eddie. Alex is a great drummer, but until you have that push and pull of the two of them playing together, like I couldn't play with Alex Van Halen. I don't know if anyone can play with Alex Van Halen.
Well, I think, if Eddie was here with Alex, he would say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the push and pull between the two of us that makes it work.
Yeah. And I think that's when I think about what we just went through, where musicians literally couldn't get in a room with each other. That's the thing I think I've missed the most, is that interaction between different people, making noise at the same time, and how that actually creates what makes me react to music.
Yeah, I've always been, again, I come from a different era, but I've always been that. I can do the isolated thing, because I also went through the 80s when every track was laid piece by piece, like building Lego castles or something. But no, I think, you come up on the Beatles and stuff like that. It's all about the vibe. It's all about the role. It's all about the wonderful mistakes that happen that really aren't mistakes, but because, people are reacting off each other. Maybe it's a second quicker or a second slower, and all that stuff is just awesome.
Yeah. You went through the 80s when drummers were lowering their rates and becoming real estate agents because of machines.
Well, and I also, too, just, sidebar, it's like I've owned 3 or 4 or 5 studios. I own so many studios I can't forget. And the 80s thing, when I didn't do this, but when professional engineers all the way down to just local studios, where the engineers were tuning drums and miking them and telling the drummers to take a walk, that was a horrible era.
Yeah.
For drummers. You got to be kidding me. Like, my personality is my tuning, and you're an engineer, you're not a drummer, but you're going to tune my drums because you know how to make the kabash snare sound,
I read that article on Hysteria by Def Leppard. I'm sure you both have read it, about the way they engineered that, and they took all the chords into like a Fairlight or something, and they played all the guitar chords like note by note, perfect by perfect. And I listen to that record now, and I do still have nostalgia for it. There's a nostalgia based on where I was when that record came out. But having said that, I wonder sometimes what it would be like if it was that band playing in a room. Like, these are great songs. Like, these are great rock songs. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, if you've ever listened to High and Dry,
Yeah,
well, you already know the answer to that question.
100%. But I think
that was a badass record.
And you know, I understand what they did and why they did it. I mean, God, yes, of course that's what you're going to do. But can you imagine, like, if it was just a bunch of guys in a room with, you know, Alan Johns or somebody, you know, somebody like that knew how to record a band.
Mm-hmm.
I do love, let me just say, I do love that Mutt Lange's background vocals are on so many different records that I love. And I'm always like, there's Mutt Lange. Hilarious.
Well, there was when Mutt Lange first got to Nashville, I knew a bunch of guys there, and when he would book sessions, because those Nashville cats are used to like 2 hours next session, 2 hours next session, he would book them for a week, lock them in the studio, and they were like pissed. It's like, well, what's this guy going to do? You know, I can't possibly stay here for a week. But every single one of those guys said that, man, if I'm in the middle of a string section and my G string is a little bit off, that dude would stop the session and point to me, and damn if he wasn't right. That my G string was a little bit off.
Totally. I mean, he's on a yacht somewhere laughing at all of us, so that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, you can bitch about whatever you want to bitch about, but if someone has a hit, they're right and you're wrong, you know?
Right. 100%. And it's like, you talk to these people and you read the tape ops and you read all the interviews, and at the end of the day, you're like, no one knows the real formula. It just happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to Matt's point, I think earlier point, it's like, you know, sometimes it's just a matter about finding what the comfort level is between the musician, the artist, and whoever it is. And,
totally.
You know, if you want to sit there and sample every single string on the guitar, if you want to just bash it around live with 3 guys in a room, or 3 guys and 3 girls, or 3 guys and 3 girls, and whatever, whatever makes you happy. Because the other thing that we're not talking about is you could spend 9 years crafting the perfect pop rock song, and you play it for somebody out there in the world, and they go,
right,
I kind of don't like it.
Yeah, I do want to say, you inspired me to talk about this for a moment, is the amount of studios that are closing has been alarming, and every time, and clubs as well. And one of the things that we've been doing actually for the last few years is we kind of take a moment to think about the history of the room. It's like a thing we do. Like, we played a club that closed called the Hemlock Tavern a couple of years ago, and we knew it was going to get demolished for condo stuff that happens everywhere. And like the band that I'm always a 3-piece, and the 3 of us just kind of like had a moment before we got on stage. I'm like, let's think about all the great musicians that have played here. And I feel like more than ever, that's the way we have to approach any type of creative environment with other people, which is an appreciation for this moment and all the moments that came before it that brought us here. And people are, I think, starving for that right now. I feel like I have a booking agent right now, and she's like, a lot of clubs have closed, and there's tons of bands that are just, chomping at the bit to get out there. I mean, I'm super excited about it, but I also think we need to remember that I don't like the word privilege, but there is a certain privilege in us having that moment with not only an audience and a band, but with the actual room that was constructed.
True. Just another quick sidebar here. It's I was on the Sessions interviewed me. That Jules Follett thing where they have interviews with all these people. And they asked me why I opened studios, and it was because, I'd been upset so much as an artist where you reach for a knob and the engineer would go, get the hell away from that I wanted to take over. And when the home studio thing started, burgeoning when I was at Electronic Musician Magazine, I was all in. Everybody needs to take control of their stuff and record it at home and these guys. However, I never knew that would mean the death of so many awesome studios and across the entire globe.
I mean, I feel like, and maybe this is the optimist in me, I feel like people are going to want to go back to studios. They're going to want to go back to a space where they can make music intentionally with other people at the same time. Like, I feel like that might be one of the positives that comes out of this year. I don't know what you both think of that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny you mention that because we recorded Surf Monster. I played drums in that band. We recorded a record for MI5 Universal that's, I think, coming out soon. I don't know. But we recorded in this one studio, local studio. And it was so hilarious because the bass player goes, this wonderful person named Desmond, I don't think the room was right for this band. And I hadn't heard that since like 1974 or something. I was like, oh, you're going to complain about the room, So now we had to go, for these other tracks we're doing, we had to go somewhere else, which is all about finding, chasing that vibe of what's the optimum room for the band sound,
There's a great podcast I'm sure you're familiar with, Broken Record, Rick Rubin. And I listened to the interview today with the dude from Arcade Fire. I forget his name, Wim something. And the guy from Arcade Fire is like, I love those old records from the 50s and 60s and 70s where you hear the room. Like he talks about you hear. It's like, he said, it's like, he compared it to like AI or like, those goggles people get. He's like, you're sitting there with those musicians. And Rick Rubin respectfully disagreed, which I thought this was a fascinating take, which I didn't see coming. He said, I like when I don't get the room and I can be in the room that I'm in or in the environment I'm in, listening to the music the way I want to listen to it instead of thinking about two different spaces. So it was like two different ways of looking at the same sort of like, I agreed with the guy from Arcade Fire because like I listen to those Zeppelin records and I love hearing, the drums in the room and like I love a good room sound.
How can you not listen to those iconic Led Zeppelin records and not hear the room?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's a great example. We're working on this Van Halen tinged EP for the fall with a guy in Jersey who's doing the drums. He's like, I think I'm going to buy the Sunset Sound reverb plugin. And there you go. That's where we're at. Here's a plugin that kind of sounds like the room that Van Halen 1 was recorded in. I think Matt's talking.
Yeah, Matt, I think you're muted again.
Muted Matt. This is a good chance to mention the Matt Wallace podcast, which, oh my God, did not go where I thought it was going to go. And it was fantastic. That's all I wanted to say.
Hey, Matt, you're still muted, kiddo.
I don't think Matt wants to talk to us.
Matt's done with us. He's looking at us like he's done with us, isn't he?
I got it. No, you guys were talking. There we go. So no, the way to pick the right room for the occasion is wherever the beer is. I mean, I've always thought that was what the answer was, but
it's a good answer. I think it depends on your bandmates and the where everyone is with their substances at any given moment.
Yeah, and if there's chicks there, it's even better. It's even a better room.
I know when I was growing up, I watched that video for Once Bitten, Twice Shy by Great White. And I thought that was the way every rehearsal should be. You have your band name spray painted on the back of all your amps, like Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii. But then you have all these like weird in the shadows hangers on with big hair, just sitting there going like this, like, hey, when are you guys done? Like, what do you guys want to do? Well, that's what got me into music right there.
Well, I think that was, I mean, that gets a lot of guys who get started in music. It became something else very quickly, but I'm not ashamed to admit that the possibility of getting girls was what, I was never going to be 6'2" and be a football star, So.
Well, I just want to say, and this is me justifying that music helped me communicate with people. Like I was kind of a shy guy growing up. I'm not anymore, but it was those moments where I was playing guitar or, people were drunk at a party and I would sit down at the piano and play Jump because I knew Jump. And those were the moments where people looked at me like, hey, you got something. And that was what kept me going. And I think the communication piece still to this day, like it all kind of comes back to that is how do I convey things to as many people as possible that matter to me?
Yeah,
dude, I don't know why it triggered this, but when you were talking about that, the high school years, I won a $50 gift certificate at this clothing store in a school raffle. I was the only one in the assembly that won, and I'd never won anything before. So I went to this clothing store in this small town, and they had one cool thing. They had a white fringe leather jacket.
Yes.
And I bought that jacket, and it was like the life-changing jacket of all times, right? And they used to call me Gib Jovi, right?
Oh, yeah.
Gibson. Yeah, Gib Jovi, right?
Oh,
The cheerleaders made up a cheer for me. None of them would go out with me, but they liked to braid my jacket when we stood on the choir risers.
Wow.
So one day the band director was yelling at me because the girls are braiding my jacket. And I'm like, tell them to stop braiding my jacket. I can't help it.
Right.
And he was like, take the jacket off, Gibson. So I took my jacket off and I threw it across the room and walked out of the choir room, and it smashed my Walkman.
Oh,
I was so disappointed.
Orange headphones, Walkman?
No, it was a cheap one. It was like Realistic or something like that.
I don't know why, but I feel like, and I might be way off. It's been a while. I feel like the white fringe jacket is what Bobby Brown wore in the Cherry Pie video for Warrant.
Yeah, maybe. I have to look that up now.
God, way back in the prehistoric times, my grandmother brought me some flared pants. Remember those?
Yeah, like the nice 70s bell bottom.
Oh, yeah. Super, super wide.
Dude.
I had to hide them from my mom. Like, we brought them at Sears, and I remember they were like copper colored. So these are almost as ostentatious as Matt's jacket. And I walk into school and I immediately get expelled.
No.
Oh man.
For wearing. So I was busted completely.
I think it would have been cooler if the choir teacher told you to take them off.
No, there was no. No. Yeah. We're going to change the subject now.
All right. Well, anyway, crazy clothes that we wore to get girls as pretending to be musicians, right?
Exactly. But Greg, one of the things you're mentioning too that I find, even though I'm in this myself, I also have this weird perspective. I've also had to write about this thing. So, and writing about the thing, it's weird because, as you said, you were shy, but you're kind of pulled out of your shyness by being a musician and developing charisma. But it's so funny because some people, material aside, they just have that glow like some movie stars where people just buy in droves what they sell. There's other people who are certainly competent and certainly look good on video or can perform well on stage, kind of just do okay. And then there's people who actually, you can't really say they suck, but they just never really lift off. They're just marginally, they're always going to play the bar down the street. Yep. I don't know if I expect an answer for this, but just when you're dealing with your own material and dealing with your videos, do you have to script out how this charisma is going to work out and hope that charisma is, do you sit there, are you completely obsessed with it? We look at demographics, we're like, people who buy our records are loosely this, so I got to look where these clothes and kind of do this because I don't want to lose the fact that these people are actually still buying me.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question. And I think the only thing I can say is I've evolved as a human. I've evolved, just my view of the world is open, is wider. It's wider than it's ever been because there's tools out there to give you that. The internet can be used in any way, shape, or form, as we've totally seen over the last few years. I have one barometer for everything I do, and that is, do I think I'll be able to watch or listen to this 10 years from now? And the only reason I have that barometer is because I have that much experience to be able to look back on the stuff I did. There was a time when I had some great success with licensing. I had my first record had songs on like great network television. I had the BMI checks coming in, and the record after that I made, I had that all in my head, and I don't like that record because I know that I was thinking about those BMI checks. So I have sort of taken a step back, and you can have as many people or as few people like your music and still be satisfied as a musician. Like, I don't think the idea of this hyper growth thing, I don't think that matters anymore. I think it's more about, you get one or two people that say, I love your record, or one or two people that write you and say, this video, I've watched it 6 times, 10 times, whatever that is. And as an artist, you have to take a step back and be completely grateful that anyone's paying attention at all, because there is so much stuff. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I get bombarded with messages to check stuff out all the time. And the only way that I can maintain my joy and happiness is to not worry about any of that. It's all about, there's going to be stuff people like, there's going to be stuff people ignore, and there's going to be stuff people don't like. And to be honest, it's all the same to me. It's really about, if I'm going to like it, if it's something that's going to resonate with me, and if it's honest to who I am at the time that I made it.
Yeah, I think that my lawyer calls it kind of career criminals. Like, he considers me a career criminal because, if I'm up here, that's awesome. If I'm down there, I don't care. I just have to make music every day, and we've all had friends or acquaintances that just need to be famous or need to be recognized, and when it doesn't happen at the level that they're expecting, they kind of disintegrate in a way, and that's sad, because I think music is therapy. It definitely brings a lot to, whether it's you talking about being brought out of your shell, or really feeling good about themselves through it. And, it's just sad to see that kind of kneecap, because, oh, I see, you wanted to be famous and you didn't get famous. You're just going to screw this whole thing.
Well, I think this is a terrible analogy, but I just thought of it. It's like when you go to buy a car, and there's going to be people that, approach you on the lot, and they're like, hey, you should check this out. This is the car for you. But those are never the people that I'm going to buy a car from. I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to find the car I like, and I'm going to find someone that's going to be able to help me with that. And I kind of feel that way about art. Like, I want to discover it on my own terms. I want to discover it and not have it shoved down my throat by some algorithm or some, Spotify marketing, guy or girl or whatever. And I think that is really, to me, the consistency. The consistency is just making as much stuff as matters to you, and just putting it out there and seeing what happens.
Good insight.
Well, Greg, what are you, I know you're working on the Van Halen tinged album, as you referred to it. What do you got going on right now? Like, what can people check out about Greg Hoy?
Great. Thanks for that question. It's, the new single's called Move Along. It's probably the slowest, most Americana song I've done. It's like the closest I thought it was a Pixie song, but now I'm thinking it might be a Mellencamp song. I'm a little scared, but I'm going to let it go. So that video is coming out next week, premiering. And then we have, so what I did with the marketing on this record is we recorded 11 songs, and the first 5 are the rockers. And that was part 1 digitally, even though it's a vinyl. And then part 2 is coming out June 1st. And that's another 6 songs. It's a little more in the pocket of laid back. So we'll do videos for those over the summer. And then, God willing, we're going to tour in August and September, all the Midwest, all the places didn't get to go to, like Nashville and Minneapolis and the Dakotas and Colorado and stuff like that.
Hey, in your experience, this is a cliche question, but I mean, do people even give a crap about albums anymore? I mean, on one level, you collect a bunch of songs that you can release singly. Yeah. But it's almost like, with the whole digital explosion now, Spotify, et cetera, it seems to me like it's so much, one for one, rather than a 12 or 15 pack.
Well, I thought about that a lot, because I had nothing but time to think about stuff last year. And what I said to myself was, I'm going to make a nice vinyl record for my fans and friends that want vinyl. And it is what it is. It's an artifact, and I love it. And I can listen to it the whole way through and not hate any of it. But as far as putting it out in the world and streaming, I'm going to slice and dice it, because no one else, like, the people that don't care about vinyl don't care. The people that don't care about these 11 songs are a moment in my life, a snapshot in my life. That's fine. I don't, if they come to it in any shape or form and it resonates with them, cool. How do I get it to them in a way that makes sense to me and them? So we put out videos for 5 of the 6 songs since September. I had Ice-T in one of my videos. It got nominated for a California Video Award. It's pretty funny. Yeah, thanks. And just the idea of being able to still present it in a way that matters. If it's a single or, you know, whatever we call it, one song, that's great. To me, it's still 11 songs on a piece of vinyl.
Got it.
Dude, that would be a sweet way to introduce your video if you didn't have the actual iced tea in there, and you could just have somebody at the end with a glass of iced tea and just say like featuring new track featuring iced tea. And then right at the end, you're like,
so Matt, I appreciate
tell us about that, by the way.
I appreciate that approach. However, that would go against who I am, because that would be, who would pay attention to me after that? They'd be like, I'm letting people down. They want the real iced tea. Now, what I have thought about is getting Ice Cube for another video and then tying them together somehow.
How do you can you tell us how you hook that up? That's something a lot of people would like to know.
Also, we should talk about which song it is too, because we haven't mentioned that.
Yeah.
So the song is called Can You Take It? It's probably the rockinest song on the record. It's very like 80s, the Knack kind of chords. Mm-hmm. My people reached out to his people. I think that's the thing I can say. And he gave me he gave me a minute of his time, and it was like he did I didn't even like, there was no direction, and he did exactly as the person putting together the video, this guy, he did exactly what I wanted, and it was fantastic. They couldn't have been better. And I got a retweet, and he like engaged with it. Like he was active post production, shall we say.
Now, I haven't seen this yet, but was it old school iced tea? Was it Law and Order iced tea, or was it Damage Plan iced tea? That's what I want to know.
I got today's iced tea. I got iced tea in August 2020, which, to be honest, is kind of what I wanted. I mean, the video, if you watch it, it's me playing Original Gangster on cassette to start. And if you follow the arc of the video, it's a bit of a dream sequence, if you know what I mean. But check it out. Can You Take It?
I'm literally gonna watch it as soon as this interview's over.
I hope you like it.
All right, I'll tell you what I thought.
Yes, send me mean messages on the YouTubes.
I think Matt might have brought this up a few months back, actually. But as we've gone through COVID through more than a year now, it's amazing that you think that like Ice-T would be inaccessible, or that this artist or that celebrity would be inaccessible. But a lot of times you're just sitting around looking for something to do. And
100%.
for no money at all, you could get somebody that wouldn't even talk to you at a party, to be on your record these days. It's crazy.
One of the things my dad taught me was it never hurts to ask. And that's always like, that's my whole mantra. Like people, I think sometimes get afraid to just ask. And if they say no, it's like, thank you. That's it.
Well, it always hurts to not ask, because the answer is always no.
100%.
Like
100%.
Literally the answer will always be no if you don't ask.
Or you'll live in the regret that you never asked those girls that were braiding your white jacket and choir out for a date.
Although, like I'm looking at Facebook and I'm thinking I'm in California right now, getting ready to finish my first record, getting ready to start. I don't know that I would have done that if I would have been stuck in New Haven, Indiana with one of my childhood sweethearts or something like that.
I don't think Greg is saying that you had to marry them and stay in the town that you were in. You didn't mean that, did you, Greg?
I know we don't have a lot of time left to talk about starter marriages, but some people have them. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's a real thing. I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, socials, like, how do people get a hold of you? What's the like, if they're like, man, I did not like that iced tea video, I like my iced tea with lemon, how do they get a hold of Greg Hoy?
I mean, all the places. I have to do the Greg Hoy, because there's another Greg Hoy who I've met. He's a very nice gentleman in Philadelphia. He's a tech guy. I'm on the Instagram mostly. I've been doing the Twitter. My management people want me to do TikTok. I don't think I'm going to do that, because I think it's a little out of my demographic, but YouTube's great. All those things. Just do a Google search. You'll find it.
God, it's so funny, because some of the companies that I consult for, should we be on TikTok? And it's like, have you looked at TikTok?
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I get things, and I'm always open to new things, but I'm like, I don't dance, and I'm not like, out. I don't want to be an outlier of my demographic on some levels. I'm like, this is just what I do. You know, I'm a guy that writes songs and puts videos out and tours.
Well,
That's it.
yeah, it's like, what do you want a rock star to be a freaking dancer on like a drum line or something? I mean, it's just like, that doesn't make any sense.
Do you know?
It gets back to what we were talking about earlier, is that you really have to be happy and confident in who you are, because like TikTok's one of those songs you can look at that and go, okay, this person changed their pants for 15 seconds and they have 27 million views. How the hell does that happen? You know, you can blow your own mind so easily with that stuff.
And going back to using the medium, if I'm going to use TikTok, I might do something where I jump up, and then when I come back down, I don't change at all, and then I jump up again, and I come back down, and I don't change. I'm just there. Hi, here I am.
Yeah, yeah, because it is like the charisma thing and all that. I mean, I was just talking to a friend today where we have a mutual friend who is not a very good guitar player, but she has a lot of fans.
Sure.
You know? And you look at these videos where it's like she's kind of clamming through stuff, and it's like, well, why would I want to learn from someone like that? But I'm wrong, because she is actually doing quite well at this. But it's interesting because it's kind of like, oh, really? You know?
I think, not to go too far down this road, I think it's your definition of what is good. Because I do think years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, everything was good enough. We got to the stage of good enough. The iPhone's good enough. An MP3 is good enough. Streaming's good enough. So now that everyone's like good enough, what's going to take the people and make it really stand out? To me, it's not a 30-second video. To me, it's someone that I discover their song and I'm going through their back catalog. I'm going down a rabbit hole on YouTube through all their videos. I like to see the progression of an artist. And maybe not everyone's like that, but to me, that's success. Like, success to me is a guy like Beck, or, someone like this band Destat, which I discovered them and they probably had 6 records out already. But to me, they're fresh, they're new. And it makes me want to go back and like see how they got to where I discovered them.
Well, like Zack Snyder. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, if you look at the Zack Snyder Justice League cut, right? How can you watch that for 3 hours and not even feel like 4 hours and not even feel like you watched a movie?
Yeah.
It's because he put a lot of love into it.
Yep.
And it was epic.
Yeah. And
it was like a great story and everything was like cool. So, I mean, like, I think the 2 or 3 album Yes vinyl, it opens up and it's like this, like an accordion, you're like, I mean, that's going to be something people are going to, long form is going to be something people are going to respect in the future. I have a feeling it's going to come back. And
Michael, it's like we said, everyone can approach it in whatever shape they want to, I mean, I'm not a religious person, but look at the Bible. People quote the Bible all the time. Here's a line. People just throw up John 3:16 at a football game. Some people can, they read the whole thing and they study it, and that's the way. I mean, I would call the Bible great art because it has such an impact on people in so many different ways. And that's the way it should be. It should be something people can approach in whatever shape or form is meaningful for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, just on a practical level for a musician's career, whoever you may be, is just having, good stuff, but more good stuff. Because like you're saying, it's not just one single. It's like you want people to discover your next single. You want people to discover your back catalog. You want people to go, oh, that was a pretty neat little Instagram story, or, so there's a lot more pressure on us all as artists to constantly come up with content that's going to reach out. It's not, putting one record out a year and you're done. One record out, go on tour, have a vacation. It's not that way anymore.
And I think that to me is the anecdote to the person you were talking about that maybe has like 1 million, whatever, Twitter people or whatever, and you listen to it and there's nothing there. Like, check in 5 years from now and see, where is this person with their art? Like, hopefully they evolve. Hopefully they put out something that's meaningful to you. But if not, you can just ignore it and let them get their, their little Oxycontin or whatever it is, dopamine hits that they need.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, you don't want to downplay anything that makes anybody happy. If you giggle watching somebody jump up and down and change their clothes on TikTok, I mean, part of me is like, well, that's okay because we want everybody to be happy. you know.
Yeah, it's
Hey,
like
look, good.
I was just gonna say it's like micro comedy. It's just like a little slice of a little comedic skit or something like that, you know. And it's for, you know, I don't know. I think short form is cool, but what we say about everyone having a short attention span, I think we're starting to realize that we do this a lot with our phones. And I think we're going to start to check that as this world society. And although it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Elon Musk's what is it, Skynet? Is that right? You know, when that rolls out to the whole world, it'll be interesting to see how other cultures deal with like social media and things like that. We may see a boom in people that are using it again, but it does seem like we're almost getting away from that in a sense, in some respects. You know?
I think along those lines, you say that. Just Matt, when you say that, what's the that?
Where like the short form social media, it's got to be just 1 minute, that kind of thing. Okay. You know, people are connecting more with content, and which is why I really like podcasting, because it's long form. You get to know people. Like when I listen to podcasts, I feel like I'm getting to know the people in the episode. And like if I met them, I'd be like, oh man, you really had this great thing you said, and it was, you know, it's cool. So I think you can do whatever you want, just like Greg was saying. It's whatever makes you happy, and you know, either way, I think our trends of what we pay attention to, it varies a lot.
I think I have a 9-month-old. If I can just jump in, I have a 9-month-old, and you know, she's going through object permanence right now. And I feel like the whole culture has just gone through object permanence, and we're coming out of that where we're like, oh wait, maybe there's an artifact here. Maybe there's something worth holding on to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I just think everybody needs to do what I want them to do.
Well, yeah,
that will never work. Well, maybe for a short term, if you're Mussolini or something.
That's never worked at all. Are you kidding me? Never.
Well, hey, we are at the top of the hour, and man, the time went by really fast.
Sure did.
Greg, thank you so much. I'd like to give everybody a quick around the horn last remarks, starting with Greg.
Yeah. I have a very close personal friend who I've been working with for mindfulness, and I just want to encourage people to take an extra step, whether they're scrolling through Facebook or grabbing a salad, and just think about the intention they have. Because I will tell you, the more all of us can think about intention, I think the better the world is going to be, especially right now.
That's good. That's good.
What you got, Mike?
Well, I think thanks, Greg, for being on the show. I think everybody out there in the Kingdom of Rock should check him out, because there's a lot of attention in his work, both in the video side of it and the musical side of it. So, you know, and it's you know, when you see something like that, I think it affects you, you know, in a different way. So whether you like Greg or not, well, of course, everyone's going to like Greg, but let's just say you're one of those people who doesn't like Greg. You know, at least experiencing what Greg does is going to, you know, enhance your own view of what you should do. So I think you're doing good teaching us what to do out there, Greg. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
And I guess I'll close it down here. My name is Matt Gibson, Kingdom of Rock. Great interview, and love getting to know you, Greg. And we're here every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And by the way, I just realized that if you put your bare toe on your Line 6 Helix while it's plugged in, sometimes it shocks you. Interesting.
Call your lawyer.
Yeah, no.
And next week we have Stephen, the CEO of Trubify, on board. Exciting new live streaming initiative that's trying to get a foothold. And I tested it out yesterday with my surf band, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but I made $2.39 in views. Do you know how many thousands of views I would have to get to earn $2 on Spotify?
That's like Doge coin.
I know. So this Trubify thing could be something if we all, and I don't own stock in it. I'm just saying it's worth investigating, because if we all get into it, 2 cents per view live, 1 cent per view for archive stuff. Steven will be on the show to tell us all about it. And there's a possibility here that some of the stuff that Matt and I have tried to talk about doing is like paying artists a little bit better for their art. Maybe we don't have to do it because perhaps Trubify's done it. So watch if you want to get some tips about how to truly monetize your art on the digital level.
Love it.
We're not talking about your vinyl records, Greg.
Buy vinyl.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't download a free Frisbee, bro.
No.
You can't do weed off an MP3.
All right, Greg.
That's true. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Matt.
Okay. Keep in touch.
I will.
Okay.